Hello, Nomad Manians. Hello, travelers. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a great Sunday. Uh, I am in Kosovo today, and I'm taking this time to give a bit of an overview of our incredible trip to East Libya. And it all seems like a dream. We were there 2 weeks ago. I was there, but once you leave and go somewhere else, you want to pinch yourself and ask, did this really happen? Was I really there? And with this trip, it really was with a lot of disbelief that we experienced everything that happened to us there. I don't want to make this too long. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk for maybe 20 minutes, and then please feel free to ask questions because the idea of this webinar is, first of all, to explain our trip, which was a truly pioneering endeavor, but then also to open up the road for more travelers to be able to go and explore Eastern Libya. Now, first of all, Libya is essentially two countries now. And it's really strange because you have two different governments, but both these governments are using the same flag, the same currency, and essentially it's the same visa policy. So it's almost like they've agreed to disagree. If you want to get a visa, it's the same visa. The only problem is that if you're landing in the east in Benghazi, it costs much more than if you're landing in the west in Tripoli. Now, I'm not really clear about who controls which part of Libya. In general, I think we are led to believe that there's a government in the east and a government in the west. But based on conversations that I had there, it appears that Haftar, who is leading the eastern government, essentially also has a lot of the southwestern part of Libya. And a group that went into Tripoli recently wasn't allowed to go to Gadames because apparently the local tribe there pledged its allegiance to Haftar. So, although the UN recognized government is the one in Tripoli, it would appear perhaps that the momentum is with East Libya right now. Now, Libya isn't very much in the news, which is interesting in its own right. Many other countries are, but we're not really hearing very much about Libya, which then makes the question arise, what is going on there? And this is what we can answer based on what we saw. So there were 8 of us on this trip, and the trip was devised as an attempt to go to southeastern Libya, the area, the district called Kufra, which at the time was the least visited Nomad Mania region. And so I went to Benghazi in December in order to meet the hosts, meet these people who own a hotel, see a bit of Benghazi, assess what is going on there, and then ask them, well, can we do an excursion to Kufra? And so I went, and I was pretty mind blown by Benghazi. I didn't really know what to expect, but Benghazi is a happening place. There's a lot of construction going on. There's a couple of pretty busy streets full of shops, glitzy shops in those areas. They like jewelry. So there's a lot of jewelry on sale. There's a couple of malls. There's a hypermarket. There's traffic jams. Oh my God. They're also building a lot of bridges everywhere within the city in order, obviously, to make the traffic go around a bit easier. The center of Benghazi, the kind of old historical center, is destroyed. So ISIS took Benghazi, I think it was in 2014, and they totally devastated it. And so that now is essentially a building site. Presumably they are rebuilding. Now, in the 2 months since my visit in December and my visit in February, I saw one of the largest hotels, which was a shell, kind of totally transformed. They're building it again to make it a five-star hotel, I imagine. So it was, when I went in December, it was basically a charred ruin. And now, within 2 months, they had already put scaffolding and upholstery. It looked more white than black. So things are happening very fast in Benghazi. And there is a lot of development. And I think their plan is to eventually make it a kind of Mediterranean Dubai. I really believe they will pull this off. At the same time, however, it is extremely conservative. You barely see any women. It's definitely a man's world. It has nothing to do with Egypt or Tunisia on the other side. And when you fly from Benghazi into Tunis, which is only an hour and 20 minutes in the air, you land in Tunis and it's a totally, totally different universe. So that's the situation in Benghazi. Never felt any danger whatsoever. Uh, the visa is essentially on arrival. What happens is that the host organizes an e-visa. You get a piece of paper, you print it, and that's it. You get on the plane, you land, and you go through. So you need a host to vouch for you. You cannot go into Eastern Libya on your own. You definitely need a host. And of course, in, I would say, 99% of the cases, we're talking about business. But, we are travelers and we wiggled it and went in, and I don't really know the procedure. So we arrived, and our first day was largely spent getting to, get our bearings. We were treated to a spectacular lunch on the first afternoon, eating far more than anyone could. And we were expecting that the next morning we would get to Kufra. And of course, I hadn't been to that region. I was incredibly excited and incredibly anxious. And that same evening, when I just went to confirm that, yes, we're going to be leaving at 6 a.m. And everything is in order, I was told, whoa, well, you know what? Actually, we're not going to Kufra tomorrow. And this was that first realization that, oops, this is not a place where you can rely on things. This is not a place where things will go according to plan. So in the end, what happened on this trip is that we went to Eastern Libya. We did the coastal trip first, and only after that we went to Kufra. Now, those days during, when we were in the eastern coast, we were all wondering, will we make it to Kufra? For a moment, our trust was shattered. Apparently, there was a permit that hadn't been applied for. We didn't really know why it hadn't been applied for in advance. I think it might have been because we hadn't really paid up. Payment was on arrival. And I anticipate that the fixer thought, well, I don't know these people and who they are. So why should I, why should I start the procedure when I haven't received any money? And only when we were actually there did he really believe we were legit and we really wanted to do what we had said. So part one of this trip was the coastal tour, essentially, into the areas east of Benghazi. And the main focus of these areas are, we can say there's three interesting things here. We've got, first of all, the archaeology, okay, and the archaeology includes and here we're seeing some photos from Benghazi, actually. This, I think, is an old church, which has now been remodeled. Anyway, so our trip took us to east, and there were four main destinations. And those were the archaeological sites of Cyrenaica, which is a World Heritage Site, Apollonia, which is on the sea not very far from Cyrenaica. Then we went off to Derna, where we just had a transit, essentially, just to have a quick look. And then we did Tobruk. So we're talking about four different things that we saw, with obviously quite a few stops along the way. Cyrenaica is really quite impressive. It is a World Heritage Site, and I would say probably one of the lesser visited World Heritage Sites of Libya. We were the only foreigners there, of course. There isn't anything like a ticket as far as I could tell. And here we are. This is the group, in front of the ancient area, which is quite extended. So I would say that this is truly a unique site. It might not have the extent of ruins that you can find elsewhere, but it does have some incredible mosaics, which are in relatively good shape. And it also has a long colonnade, one of the longest ones that I have ever seen. But I think that the biggest impact of this place is how authentic it is, how there seems to be very little intervention. You know, there's barely any scaffolding or anything of the type there. Um, and you know, the local football team was actually practicing in this archaeological area, which I'm not sure this is really allowed by UNESCO, but you know, who's there to check? And of course, the fact that we were all on our own. There were a couple of locals and a few couples actually, which was interesting. But that was basically it in Cyrenaica. Now, Apollonia, which is very close to this as well, is beautiful. It's by there we are. This is Apollonia, and what the big draw of Apollonia is obviously the sea location. It's right by the sea. There's also a small theater. So all this really shows the historical backbone of Libya. Of course, Leptis Magna and Sabratha in the west are much more known, and perhaps on one level, they you can say they are more impressive. But I would say these are also extremely significant, and I believe that Cyrenaica is actually bigger as an area. So this is what we did the first day. We slept in a kind of resort of sorts. And then we went on, and this is a picture of Derna on the second day. And here, this building that you can see is new. So Derna, I think it was September of 2023, was devastated by a flood. A quarter of the population drowned or was just swept away. This was the greatest tragedy of Libya in modern times. But it's nice to see Derna being rebuilt, and impressive that they could put up you know, basic buildings in such a short time. That suggests that they really do have some plan, some organization. There are a lot of foreign companies, Egyptian, Turkish, I think quite a few from the Gulf, you know, all involved in that. So yeah, it's nice to see this reconstruction work. There isn't very much else to see in Derna. When I went in 2 years ago, I had been to Derna, and at the time there were many ruins of the ISIS terror on Derna. But what happened with that is obviously these buildings that had been destroyed by ISIS were among the ones that were swept away. And then we went to Tobruk, which is about 2 hours drive from Derna. And obviously we all have heard the word Tobruk, I suppose, because of the Second World War. And I would say that the war is still the main draw to Tobruk. The cemeteries are really worthwhile. I think, you know, I am very much a proponent of the idea that we need to honor people who gave their lives in order to sort of save us and make sure that we can live in freedom. And so I believe this photograph is from the French cemetery. And in Tobruk, there are three cemeteries. You've got the French one, you've got the Allied one. This one is from the Allied one. And the Allied one implies Australian, British, Polish, Czech, Greek, and you know, a few others as well. Very poignant. And this here is the German cemetery, which isn't actually a cemetery. This is more like a, I mean, I don't know what I think they call it an ossuary, because what they've got is they put the bones there, and there's more than 6,000 fallen German people who have been buried there. So this is also extremely gloomy, extremely difficult. And we were accompanied by rainy weather. So I would say our afternoon in Tobruk was really quite heavy. But then Tobruk also has its lighter side. Here is an image of Tobruk taken from the hill from the German ossuary. So it does look a bit nondescript, but the center is buzzing with life. There's shops, there's people, and there's Domino's Meat House, and you can have a pretty good meal there. Now, overall, I will say that um, in the cities in Libya, food is not an issue. So we had really good meat. And here is another image of Tobruk. This is in the center, and it's the old church, which is now a museum with a lot of bric-a-brac, a bit of war stuff, a bit of ancient stuff, everything they had. They've thrown it into this, which I think is really bizarre, but makes for a good visit. And our visit was really not that well planned. I have to say, until this time, when we were in eastern Libya, I was really desperately trying to cling on to some sort of schedule. We're going to do it at this time, we're going to do it at that time. Well, that does not really work in Libya. People don't understand the concept of time. And so you need to be flexible. You need to be ready that, you will be waiting. Here you've got the hypermark, which was huge. You've got goodies. We bought a lot of goodies there. And obviously things are really, really cheap. You can have, you get really good value. And I don't think you would imagine that you would get a hypermarket of that caliber in a place like Tobruk. And so I would say that all this is a good surprise. This is not a dangerous place. It didn't feel dangerous at all. We had a really good time. People in Domino's Meat House were watching the football, But again, I repeat, it's a man's world. No women to be found. Really a bit unsettling. And especially when you think of Saudi, where now things are different. Well, Libya doesn't really quite play the way that Saudi does. Now, we did get back from this in one piece. And of course, we were anxious. Are we going to make it to Kufra? Aren't we? But the permit did come through. And so we did go. Now, the trip to Kufra is not easy. Kufra does have an airport. And if you were to fly it, I imagine the flight would take about an hour and a half from Benghazi. The problem with Libyan domestic flights is that they're totally unreliable, even at the best of times, and even on the more, popular routes such as Tripoli, Benghazi, you'll frequently get 3, 5, 7 hour delays. I'm not sure there is a flight to Kufra. I did try to find out, but it was question unknown. So we anyway thought that it's much better to drive there, both from the point of view of pricing, but also from the point of view of some sort of reliability. The drive to Kufra is a long, long, long hike. We left. We were going to leave at 7 a.m. from Benghazi. We ended up obviously leaving delayed by an hour. So we did leave our hotel at 8, and we didn't get into Kufra until 1:30 the next morning. So we had a long day with a lot of breaks. And now remember that there are gas stations, but they're few and far between. So they need to make sure they have canisters with gas. They also need to make sure that the vehicles are in great shape. And in fact, miraculously, we never had a puncture. We never actually had a problem with the vehicles. But this is because they really took good care of them. You could see we stopped in Ajdabiya, which is the town 2 hours out of Benghazi, and you could see they were going to different shops and buying supplies and all sorts of things that might be necessary for the vehicles. So in that sense, they seem to really understand the mechanics of the drive. Obviously, they've done this drive. The road is, at some parts, it's decent. At some parts, it's horrible. But at any rate, you will eventually get there. And, well, we were the first group of travelers to get to Kufra. I'm quite confident in saying there hasn't been a group of foreigners in there since 2011. So we made it there. It was a big adventure. Of course, we arrived exhausted and everyone just wanted to sleep, but that was not going to happen because in Libya, you have to eat, and they will always make sure that you get your food. So at 1:30, 1:45, when we finally arrived at our destination, we were presented with all this food. And, we didn't want to appear unappreciative, so we ended up sleeping at 3. However, not everything is smooth. So the next day, and this is the breakfast we were given the next morning, we ended up spending almost the whole day in the compound, and that was very frustrating. We were very eager to go out, very eager to explore. We're there, we can't believe we're there, but instead of being there, we're actually stuck in the compound and not allowed out. Apparently, what they said is that one of the cars needs some maintenance, and to cut a long story short, we had to entertain ourselves. But I will say that this is also part of the fun. You will get to know the other travelers. This is a supermarket in Kufra, by the way, and you see that, yeah, it's quite modern. It's not as ramshackle as you might expect. Kufra is miles away from any other settlement. Here are a few of the local hosts who made a fish for us as a special treat, I suppose. So, we were treated well. We were treated in an extremely friendly way, and it was never dangerous. And these are random people who came up to us in Kufra as we were going around exploring things. So, the last day there, we had what I think arguably was our best day, which was the desert adventure. Now, some people have mentioned the area which is on the border between Sudan, Egypt, and Libya, which is the highlight. I think, intended to go there, or, our hosts had every intention of taking us there. The problem is that technically you have to check out of Libya and then drive almost 200 miles to get to this Jebel Al Waynat, I think it's called, which is at the back of beyond. And this was probably just too much. It was incredible enough that we were there. We ended up spending 2 hours at this border checkpoint, and it's not the border because it's next to Kufra, but this is the last checkpoint in Libya. But there was negotiation. Clearly, we had one permit, but someone didn't want to take responsibility. And anyway, we did not make it past that point to where they had intended to take us and where they had intended to have us camp for the night. When we do the trip again, we maybe be able to do this. We'll see. I mean, I will negotiate that, and perhaps this will be possible. But I think that there might be some security risks in the sense that there's no one there. So if there's any bad guys, there's no one really to protect you. But the next day, the last full day we had in the desert was great. We really had a desert adventure. We saw a lot of quirky things. We did the Monument for the War, which is near Kufra. There's a tank there. We saw this bizarre plane, which is a wind marker in the absolute middle of nowhere. They were telling us that the Italians had wanted to build an airport in the area, but this seems like a very strange and bizarre story. I have no idea why this plane is there. So this desert adventure was a lot of fun. This is the tank at the cemetery, which is near Kufra. And this is actually a British tank from 1942. So it's not from the actual Battle of Kufra in 1931. I don't know how this particular tank got there. Maybe it was left over from the war and they just shipped it down there to make something more of the monument. And here we are in a kind of oasis, which actually has a salt lake. So there's even water around there, and a village which is now abandoned, where you can kind of walk around and see what used to be houses. This is really quite beautiful. Here you see some of the ruins of the houses and the lake behind. And these contrasts in the desert, they are really, really pretty. And for anyone who likes desert, I would say this is 100% a true desert experience. Now, I would say this was an amazing trip. We came back all right. We left all right. Nothing went terribly wrong. We were treated very well. We never felt danger of any kind. Um, the only issue, if you can say that, is the lack of good communication, the fact that it is almost impossible to understand what they have in mind. They will take you where they think you want to go, which is actually probably where you do want to go, but you don't know this in advance. So you need to be ready for the unexpected and just play along and go for the ride and enjoy it. And that's it. We all got out and we lived to tell the tale. And I think this is the kind of trip where you really get bonded for life. So the eight of us, I think, are truly bonded. Um, and we will never forget this. And we had a very broad range. We had Frank Reiner with us, who is 81, and he was very brave to try to attempt this trip. But I wanted him to come because he is a legend. I've known him for many years. We were together on the Bouvet trip, and I am wearing the T-shirt of that trip. So I definitely wanted Frank to be there. He may not be in this photo. Oh no, he is. He's right there in the right. There he is. And then, of course, we had the youngest member of our group was Mark from Germany, who was 24. Where is Mark? Well, Mark is not in this photo because Mark was usually running around doing his own thing, which is technically not really allowed. But he's perhaps somewhere. Yeah, there he is, long hair, flipping away. And we had Dustin, who is a UN master. We were 4 UN masters on this trip out of the eight of us. So on the whole, it was a great group, and the group makes the experience. And I would say, if you're going to do this trip, there's no way you want to do it alone. It's not only not practical because obviously you're going to be paying more, and they're going to have to mount this whole experience just for you. But then what are you going to do? The locals barely speak any English. It's going to be awkward. You're not going to have anyone to talk to. So this is the kind of trip where you really need a group. You want to do it with like-minded people, and this is where we come in. So I'm happy to announce one more Kufra trip. And the thing with places like these, you need to strike when the iron is hot. So when I went to Benghazi in December and they told me, yeah, we can do Kufra, I was like, damn, we need to do it now. This is not something that you will say, oh, let's do it in 6 months. And because it's Ramadan now in the Muslim countries, I needed to really, fit it in before Ramadan. So we did this in February. Now we have planned another trip for early April, starting April 6th, another group, same itinerary, same idea. And we hope that we're going to get some interest for this. Again, it's going to be a small group, 7 people, not more than that. Same idea. This time we're adding one more night, though, as a buffer, because I do think we ended up coming back very tired and then leaving at 5 a.m. On an international flight. And I think we didn't really see Benghazi in the way that we would have perhaps wanted to. So an additional day at the end, which can also be a buffer if something goes wrong. And it also aligns well with the schedules of Turkish Airlines, which started a flight to Benghazi in January. So 6th of April, which is a Sunday, to the 15th of April, which is a Tuesday. So you're going to get 9 full days in Libya. Not quite enough for a slow visit, but if you've been to Libya for at least 2 days before, then you can tick your slow on Nomad Mania. So if you're interested, please do sign up. The previous trip, within a day we had enough people. So I don't know if this will happen now, but hopefully it will. No one else is doing this trip. This is really just Nomad Mania, as far as I know. Perhaps no one else is crazy enough to take people to a place where there's no obvious sights. But on this trip, it's not about the sights. It's about the adventure. It's about understanding Libya. It's about, seeing the contrasts of Libya, because you've got the coast and then you've got the desert, two very different geographical places, but also I would argue culturally, the people in the desert are very different, not to mention that down there's a lot of Sudani, Chadians, it's quite multi-culti down there. So that's it. I encourage you to ask some questions. So if you do have any questions, this is the time to ask them. So I'm waiting to see if anyone has something to say. If not, this presentation will be on our YouTube, so you can see it on replay. And if you do have any questions, we are always very happy to answer them. The trip is yes, this has just been put there. You've got the trip details where you can go and see all the little details of this trip in April. We do hope to also have another such trip in late October when it's cool enough again. Obviously, in the summer, going to Kufra would be folly. Okay, so one question is, what was the weather like? It was cold. So I think I had already warned people that it would be cold. We were underdressed. In Benghazi, it was not too cold, but it was definitely not hot. We got even a bit of rain. It was sort of around 12, 13 in Benghazi. Then as we went to the desert, you have the typical difference in the desert of a sort of warm day and colder night, but it was never hot, hot, hot. I would say it was up to 20 in the day, and then at night it got cold. We should have had warmer clothing. But in April, I anticipate that it will already be warmer. So it's not going to be that cold. And that's why, well, we're obviously going to avoid the summer season, and we're going to offer this again, hopefully in October. The problem with places like this, you never know. Everything may change in an instant. And that's why we're really eager to get another group in now when we believe it's possible, because you saw what happened in Syria. Who knows what may happen in Libya anytime soon, so with these places you need to go as soon as you can. There is an airport in Kufra. Can we fly in? Well, this is what I mentioned, that I could not find reliable information about a flight. I am not aware if there is a scheduled flight right now into Kufra. I asked multiple times. I didn't get any answer. There might be a flight or there might not be. If there is, the day may not be, they may schedule it for a Tuesday, but it may not fly until a Thursday, which means it's a bad bet. So that's why we are driving. So yes, I would say driving ensures you get there. With flying, yeah, who knows? Any other questions? Well, I'll wait a minute just in case someone thinks of something. If not, yeah, we don't do many webinars like this, but I would say that Kufra was really unique. And that's why we thought that for this region, which was the least visited Nomad Mania region until we made it there. So because we all ticked it, now it is not the least visited. And we'll see if we can have an expedition to the least visited, which I believe now is a region of the Solomon Islands. But anyway, yeah, we thought a webinar is definitely worth it for Kufra. All right, Nomad Manians, travelers, thank you very much. Go off and do whatever you want to do with the rest of your Sunday. And thank you for joining me. And yeah, do keep an eye out for our Nomad Mania trips. We're going to be coming up with a lot of different trips to a lot of diverse places. And this is all part of our effort to really develop community, to really get people to meet each other and to get to know each other, not to just be online anymore. We're doing more of that. And do remember, if you haven't already, download our app and enable the GPS feature and see what other nomads are around you. Meet up with them and get to know each other. All right. Thanks very much. Take care. Enjoy your travels wherever you go. Bye from me.